everybody, and welcome to DC Fine Art. I'm sorry for the late video. I have been sick with the zombie virus, I guess you can say, the coronavirus. So I'm still trying to get better, but today I'm actually going to be going over the Liquitex Basic. It's like the mediums, the gel, and the um, molding paste, and just kind of see, I was creating that Egyptian painting and just kind of doing that just for fun and experimenting with the different Liquitex Basics and the Liquitex Professional and um, the Iridescent of the Liquitex Basics. Here is the molding paste, and I was just kind of curious on how this would look if I were to use this on my Egyptian painting, which I wasn't for sure if I was actually going to do it or not, but I wanted to experiment first on a white sheet of paper, which I know this is white, but there's a coarse texture medium, and that there I will not be using because it's more like gritty, like sand. Like, I don't even know if it's actually thicker than sand. It's more like salt rocks. And then I got the gesso that's in there too. And so I just decided to see what kind of consistencies these actually had when using them on a white piece of paper, maybe mixing them with some of the paints that I had just to kind of see what it does and if I can use this on my painting. Now here is the gloss heavy gel, which I haven't tried it, and I guess it was supposed to be like thicker than the gloss gel medium. I thought it would be a little bit thicker, but while doing the testing here, we will find out. And there is the molding paste that I'll be using just to test that out also. I kind of had an idea that I was really hoping that it would work for, but one of them, if depending on how thick they were, I was really wanting to create like this nose on the Egyptian painting, like kind of like a 3D look. Like if you wanted to mold this stuff into like a 3D look. But you can see there, this consistency is like toothpaste. So, looks like I'm actually a little bit out of frame. Let me go ahead and move it down some. There we go. So, that would be basically how I can describe the molding paste, is almost if you're working with toothpaste. It's almost identical when it comes to the consistency. And it kind of sticks to your brush a little bit, so you can't really mold it like I thought it would be, like more like thicker and to where you can actually mold it into a shape maybe, but it didn't seem to work out that way. I even put a little bit of water on my brush just to see if maybe I could smooth out the edges and then create like maybe a peak or like a roundness to it, but it didn't really do what I was hoping that it would do. Basically, with the molding paste, I'd even added some color to it, and I'll go to that. But you can see a little bit up close by me adding some water to it. It kind of looks like paint, but it's like thicker like toothpaste. And I mean, I can still see where you could use this like in a painting if you wanted to create like texture, like make a flower petal with it, just one little stroke and make a flower petal. And then you have that stucco kind of look to it. Now there is the gloss medium gel, and that looks a little bit white and shiny. Now the one thing that I did notice is that whenever I was putting this down, you still couldn't mold it, but it looked like kind of like a plastic kind of look to it whenever I put it down. Like it was really shiny, kind of had that plastic kind of look to it, like a white plastic. But when I came back to it and I let this thing completely dry, I thought that it was actually going to dry white. And see how shiny it is? It's really, really glossy compared to that one that looks like toothpaste. And that one's like really super shiny, like white plastic. At least that's the way it looks. It's not really thick. You can't mold it into anything. But when it did dry, between that medium, the gloss medium gel, and then I got the gloss medium heavy gel, and both of these are about the same thing. I mean, it looks like a white plastic kind of look to it. It's not as thick as the molding paste. It is shiny, so it's not like matte looking like the toothpaste look of that molding paste. But I noticed that once I let it dry, and I mean fully dry, like I put this paper away, didn't really think much of it. When I came back and grabbed it and looked at it again, and I mean it's been after hours, it was like crystal clear. I mean, it looked clear. So it went from white to clear, which I thought about it and I was like, well, that would be an amazing thing to add if you were doing like a painting with leaves or floral and you wanted to add like a water look to it. This would definitely be great for that because it actually dries like glass, like crystal clear looking crackled glass. So it's really cool looking. But as you see, it comes out white and just thicker. But you can't mold it. So this was not going to be working out for my, and it took a little bit to dry too, but it would not work out for my Egyptian painting that I was wanting to do and kind of use it to create some sort of 3D effect to it. I just, yeah, wasn't going to work out that way. Now the next step, I'm going to go ahead and add some of this drop of like, I think it's like an iridescent that I used. It's either that or it was like a Payne's Gray. And I put a little drop of paint on there, and now I'm trying to pick up this molding paste and just kind of adding it to the color or adding a little bit of the color to the molding paste just to kind of see what it does. And when I did that, it did make the molding paste like a little bit like it lightened the color of it is what I was trying to say. So it did lighten the color like if you were adding a little bit of white to your color. It did make it thicker, but it was still really pasty and it kind of thinned it out a little bit on the paste, so it wasn't even that thick. At least not enough to where I could actually um, make anything out of it. Like I couldn't mold it or create a texture like a 3D texture like I was hoping. And then here I decided to add even more of the molding paste. So I figured, okay, well, if I add even a whole lot more, maybe I could actually get it to create like some sort of texture. And there I'm trying to create like a ridge or at least something to make some sort of texture like a molding like that I would do maybe for like a nose or something like a ridge. But yeah, it was definitely a fail on that. This molding paste is definitely not wasn't working out the way I wanted it to. So yeah, the best thing I would say for this is to use it for textures and stuff like that, but to actually create like a mold that gives a painting a 3D effect, like an actual mold of a face or a nose or maybe some higher eye ridges around the eyes. Yeah, that would be very, very difficult to do with this. So it did not turn out the way I was hoping with the purpose that I was hoping that I could do with it. But that's why you always take out a sheet of white paper and test all these things out before actually applying it to your painting. Because if I went directly into my painting with this stuff and found out, hey, it's not going to work, then I would have ruined a whole entire painting. And there I'm just using some water. I was trying to use water to try and smooth out the edges, see if I can't smooth them out instead of having that rough like stucco kind of look to it. But it's still, I don't know, I didn't like how it turned out whenever I was doing that. And it takes forever to dry. It was just making sure that underneath it wasn't actually going through the paper. But yeah, if you're going to use this stuff, I would use it for like a texture, doing flower petals, using like texture for a background, and then painting over it, having the, after it completely dries and having like kind of like a stucco look for a background effect. That would be perfect for this kind of stuff. And then with the gel, and since it dries completely clear and looks really shiny, clear like glass, it would be perfect for adding rain droplets or water look to any of your leaves or flower petals. So yeah, I can see some things that are good for this, but others, yeah, not what I was going for. And there I'm just kind of trying to paint over some rough texture there that I had some of the molding paste on, and just kind of go over something that was a little bit more drier, which is very hard to see, but there's some of it that's already dry. All right, so here I am doing, I kind of did a speed painting of this, and I was trying to use my Liquitex Basic, or not really the basic, this Liquitex Professional Heavy Body, and it was the iridescent copper kind of look to it. And I went ahead and used this, and you can see it has a little bit of a tone to it, but it was more transparent than anything else. So trying to use this on something that like is gold already, like this metallic canvas, it did not show up as good as what I was wanting. I tried adding in a darker brown to it to try and get some sort of look out of it, but it was just too transparent and I didn't really care for it. Here is the white iridescent, and it's the heavy body also, and I tried using it on the this painting, and it just ended up going clear. Like it had a little bit of a sparkle to it, but it did not, it wasn't really opaque like I was hoping it would be. So I even I tried using it even on his face. I went up there and tried to use some of the iridescent white on his nose, like where the reflection was of it, and it still ended up, it looked white, but then once it dried, it was like very transparent, kind of like if you added glue, like Elmer's glue to them. So here I am going back to my Liquitex Basics, and I'm using these to do all the detail work around the little chest plate area. And for the most stuff, I really did like the Liquitex Basics more than I did the heavy body. Like, I guess it really, it was kind of similar, except that, I mean, you still, even with the heavy body, I still had to layer. It's just, it was more pigmented, is basically all it was for the difference. So here I am adding in a lot of the detail around the chest plate area. And as I go, you'll notice that this here, I'm just using strictly the light blue out of the Liquitex Basics. And then I took some of the heavy body, and it is the, see here, the muted colors that I had. And I used my muted turquoise along with the white and mixed it up just to see if I would get more of that turquoise look to it. And it ended up being very similar to the light blue enough to where it almost didn't really make a difference if I used the light blue out of the Liquitex Basics or the Liquitex Professional Heavy Body on the turquoise, muted turquoise and white. So both of them were kind of similar in comparison, at least between the colors. Now I'm just going in with just blue with a little bit of white mixed in and just going over the darker blue so that way my beads or at least the detail work in those little stones are filled in. So it's all the difference between lights and darks is all I'm doing. And I'll go back and forth throughout this whole entire thing, going over each individual strand and band of colors, how they change. But in this video, I'm just kind of going over just the Liquitex Basics and the Heavy Body along with the Iridescence. The Iridescence I wasn't too fond of just because of, well, how translucent they were. I thought they were going to be more opaque. Now, even though I'm using on this right here, the whole thing throughout, I've been using a lot of the Liquitex Basics. That has been the majority of my go-to paints with this. And I start working with the heavy body whenever I start going up and around his head area with the blue strands that's going to go up and around. I'll be working with the heavy body professional. And yet, still with that, even though it has a lot of pigment in that paint, it's still, even if you use a little bit of water, it still kind of washes it down or dilutes it to where you still need to add another layer. I mean, it still is a layering process even with that. Now here I'm putting in that white iridescent around his face, and when it dried, and I'll go back and I have pictures of it, but once I go back and show you guys, I mean, it's very, very opaque, and I wasn't planning on that. I didn't think that the iridescent would be this opaque, or not opaque. It's more translucent. Sorry about that. And yeah, I mean, after I added in the white with it, when I let it dry, I'll have a picture of that, a still picture of it to show you guys how translucent it is. It almost looks like glue. You know how glue dries clear and then you have a little bit of a sparkle in it? That's pretty much how it was. So very disappointed with that. I thought it was going to be more opaque, and it's not. It's more translucent. It would be something that you would probably go over the top of if you already had paint laid down. And that could be very well the reason why it is not light fast, because of its translucentness. I mean, there is no way that that would be like very light fast at all, considering just how thin and translucent it is. Now here I'm going to go ahead and jump kind of straight through this. Sorry about that. And that way we can kind of skip ahead to where I have the still photos of the iridescent white and just how it looks whenever it completely dries. Just finishing up some of these little final details. And this is what it looks like when it completely dries. It turns from white to clear, almost like a glue. So there's a little bit further away. So yeah, not very opaque at all. So now here is the muted turquoise and the titanium white of the professional heavy body. And I'm going to use these, like, I'm going to mix them up a little bit and make like the turquoise look. And see if I can't put this over the light blue that I used of the Liquitex Basics and see if it looks any different. And then I'm going to take a little bit of the regular turquoise and just use it in between for like some of the shadowing and darker areas. So here I'm going on top of the light blue with the turquoise, like the heavy body, And then there's some of the darker color. And you can't really tell a difference. I mean, between the mixed muted turquoise with a little bit of white compared to the light blue of the Liquitex Basics, it pretty much looks the same, except for the shadowing. Now here, I went ahead and started using more of the professional heavy body. This one here is I do believe it's like the ultramarine blue. And it's really darker, it's really pigmented. So, I mean, you got a lot of pigment in it and it is thicker. But if you use a little bit of water, just so that way you're not doing any dry brushing, it does look a little bit translucent. You can kind of see through it. It's kind of got like a bluish tone to it. So you do have to layer a few times, even whenever you use the heavy body, unless you're wanting kind of that look to where it's a little bit translucent and it's not all one solid color. But if you're wanting that, I mean, yeah, you definitely, it doesn't eliminate completely the layering process on the heavy body, at least what I've seen on this. But then again, I am using a canvas board that is not the greatest whatsoever. So it's like that cardboard canvas board from Fredrix. It's not really this one. I mean, I can tell you it hasn't been my favorite to work on. It doesn't usually take in the colors like a regular canvas would. Like a regular canvas, it seems to take a little bit more than this. This feels kind of like you're working on plastic. I guess because of how much it's been gessoed and treated and primed so much. But here I'm just kind of going through with my blue. And I do believe I mixed a little bit of like a darker color with it too to kind of darken it some. I didn't want it really bright blue, so I could have used like a Payne's gray mixed in with it. So here I'm just finishing up some of the around his head, and then I'll have to jump straight to it because leaving it just the way it is with the gold canvas, it's just, you know, it's just very, very plain. And the best way to do it is to paint, you know, paint it to where it looks like gold instead of just leaving that gold show through. And so I ended up taking some of the Liquitex Basics and I worked on his face right after this on getting that gold reflective shiny look to it. Or at least it looks gold. And here are the colors that I used. I know there's a Naples yellow and a brown umber and a yellow oxide. And I just went back and forth using those colors. If I wanted it a little darker, I added a little bit more of the brown umber to it. If I wanted it a little lighter, then I add the Naples yellow. So there I'm putting in the blue around the eyes. And this is a layering process on this too. So some of the areas that needed shading, you know, it would end up looking a lot darker. And then I would go ahead and layer it on top with some of the lighter colors. And that way some of that shadow pushes through underneath. Making sure though on whenever I'm doing this that I'll spray the canvas just lightly with my fine mist sprayer so that way I can go back and smooth it out with a blending brush. And there we go. I really did enjoy working with the Liquitex Basics on this one. Probably the most, and I mean, it very well could be just because I have a lot more of the Liquitex Basics than I do with the heavy body. Excuse me, sorry. But yeah, I like the whole layering and um, the thinner coat of paint to where I can keep working on my layers. Sometimes I had a little bit too much water on the canvas, and that's where you see me kind of just dabbing it and kind of getting rid of some of that water. It always looks darker on camera, I know, than in person, but that is okay. Now there I went ahead and used the graphite iridescent Liquitex Basics, and it was just very thin. It wasn't really dark. I mean, not super dark. In the picture here, it may look really dark, but it really wasn't. It would definitely need multiple layers added to it. So I ended up, after it completely dried, I went back over the eyes with the Payne's Gray. And that actually did the trick a whole lot better than the iridescence. Now I'm adding in some of this white to give the reflection and some of this blue for the eyebrows. But yeah, I mean, using these three colors that I used on him to create the gold effect look, um, yeah, it looks 10 times better than just leaving it as the gold canvas. And here I'm working on the snake and the bird. I think it's like a bird. It's like a bird slash something else. There we go again, not knowing my history very well. And after I get through adding in a lot of these details, I went around the snake's eyes with some gold, and then I'll finish off the little bird, and then I'll end up jumping over to doing some of the glazing, and just so that way we're toning down a little bit of the background. Now you could actually go over it again, which I may end up doing that, later, but just kind of toning down the background with some more glazing. Now I used a Payne's Gray on that in order to do the background. And creating some shadow underneath the bird slash snake. Adding a little bit of reflection with the white. And some darker tones, kind of darkening out that beak a little bit and adding some shadow. And here I am doing a wash and doing this glaze real quick with the Payne's Gray. And then I take my mop brush and just kind of swipe it through, kind of getting rid of some of those brush strokes. And then it disappears from the screen. It's really hard to hold it upright and then do this. Usually if I just lay it down, it works so much better, but this canvas definitely didn't want to absorb that much. So it was like consistently going over it with a mop brush, trying to dry it out. But I wanted that old look in the background because this is not supposed to look new. And then I just go over it with the glaze just to tone it down, give it that darker look to it, that aged dark look. And there we go. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and next week I'll be doing these soft pastels, so stick around, and I hope to see you all next week. Take care, you all. Bye.